Jon Norman has been covering every single day of all 5 tests over the last 6 weeks. And that at the Oval, pretty much, I thought, summed up the series, mate. How have you absorbed all of it?
I haven't absorbed it. There's just way too much to absorb. I heard with about 4 hours to go today, I sent my colleague Sam Ellard around the grounds for him to record just the punters. I said, just ask them all what your favourite moment of the series was. And we're listening back, because of course I wasn't with him when he was doing these interviews, on the show that we produced following on. And I was listening to all these guys going, and girls going, oh, and there were so many moments I'd even forgotten from the series, you know. There was the declaration was the best bit. Zach Crawley's innings was the best bit. Chris Wokes was the best bit. Mark Wood bowling 95 miles an hour was the best bit. Just so many moments, and that's just continued through to today. You know, we had another one of those sliding door moments when just before the lunch break with Steve Smith and Travis Head, they'd put on the best part of 100 runs for the 4th wicket, and the victory target was about 140 away. And Steve got the ball onto past his pads and ballooned up, and Ben Stokes took the catch high up in the air, but managed to, he kind of dropped the ball. It looked like he was about to start celebrating, and then his hand hit his knee, the ball hit the floor, and then for some really weird reason, England reviewed the not out call when they knew that the catch hadn't been taken, and they lost a review doing it. And then they walked off the field, and it was like, wow, what on earth has happened there? And you thought, well, that could be the moment that Ben Stokes has dropped the Ashes. Of course, that's not how it ended up. So Stokes, you think, has done a Herschel Gibbs at the World Cup for South Africa against Australia and essentially dropped the Ashes, go off for 2.5 hours with loads of time left, sun out, and then 2 of the unheralded names in this side, Moeen Ali, combined, 2 Birmingham boys, 2 guys that essentially nobody thought would even be playing in the Ashes 2 months ago. And Moeen Ali takes the wicket of Travis Head, and then all hell breaks loose. 4 wickets for 11 runs, 5 wickets for 30. Pat Cummins goes, and suddenly it's England's game. And then, of course, Stuart Broad, of all people, comes in and follows up hitting a 6 from his final ball in international cricket by taking a wicket with his final ball in international cricket as a bowler, wraps up the win, and we all go home. And basically, we missed this series, and it's only finished an hour ago.
Jon, do you feel like you've won, even though you haven't?
I feel like cricket's won. I really do. I feel like Test cricket's won. I feel like England have performed heroics. You know, England really should have won this series 4-1. You know, I'm not just talking about the washout. They should have won at Edgbaston as well. And Australia were really rocked by that injury to Nathan Lyon. But then let's not forget, England lost Jofra Archer for the entire series and couldn't play Mark Wood until the 3rd match. And it was Mark Wood's wicket of Labuschagne that really made the first hour England's this morning. It was Mark Wood's batting at Headingley and bowling that turned the tide of this series. So both teams have missed out on having their full allocation of players. But the manner in which England have essentially stared a 2-0 deficit, and instead of changing the way they operate, like everybody told them to, they doubled down on it and carried on going. And if not for the weather, then yeah, they could have been the only side in the history of cricket without Don Bradman that's come from 2-0 down to win 3-2.
Jon Norman, cricket editor for talkSPORT, with us. The crowd. Talk us through the crowd.
Oh, the crowd at times. I'll talk you through the crowds very quickly, test by test. Edgbaston, the best crowd in cricket in this country, the noisiest crowd in cricket in this country, absolutely immense. Lords, usually the quietest crowd in cricket, but on day 5 turned feral after the stumping. Headingley, that's where the comeback started. The crowd at the Western Terrace are second only to Edgbaston in terms of raucousness. Old Trafford, that is an 8,500 temporary permanent stand, and it was noisy for 3 days and then underwater for 2. And then the Oval, which is actually quite a polite ground. You don't get the booze like you do everywhere else. I'm talking about pantomime booze. The booze here is very expensive. But day 5, just when the desperation was starting to kick in and England were behind the game and Australia favourites, that's when you really heard the noise. And the sound that greeted some of those wickets today will live long in the memory. Absolutely incredible.
How do Australia view this series? How differently than what England will?
A huge lost opportunity and a career-defining one. Look, Pat Cummins has had 6 months, and I think that people should remember this in Australia and New Zealand. He goes to India, the toughest place to tour, and has to leave halfway through because, of course, his mother was about to pass away, which he did. Then comes back to England, the start of a 2-month period where he wins the World Test Championship, something only you guys have managed to do before, and then goes 2-0 up in the Ashes. 2 close games. He loses a third game, and then it kind of falls apart for him. Fortunate not to lose at Old Trafford. Could have won here at the Oval, won a good toss. Australia dropped the Ashes on day one, truth be told. 5 drop chances, and the one by Carey when Brooke was on 5. You know, that is another massive sliding door moment. I think Australia will really feel that they've missed an opportunity here because Steve Smith, David Warner, Usman Khawaja, Pat Cummins probably, they'll never win an Ashes in England now, and this is as good a chance as they're ever going to have.
Do they go away sour, or do you think they're still going to be cocky afterwards?
No, they go away despondent. There are 2 reasons they go away despondent. Firstly, because they've given up the opportunity to win an Ashes. 2-0 up with 3 to play, and they didn't win it. And secondly, they go away despondent because, you know what? They've been basballed. That's the last thing they ever wanted. But they realise, they look in the mirror, and all of the talk in the head of this was that it was not about basball, and basball didn't exist. They know that basball does exist, and over the last 3 tests, they have experienced it firsthand.
What a series. Does this go down? Well, I mean, you know, we always do this, don't we? We talk about 81, we talk about 2005. None of us can remember when Bradman's team came back from 2 down, but where does this stack in terms of Ashes series?
For me, it's the best. 2005 obviously ended with a winner. Some will say that you can't have the best series when there's no winner. Some of the greats of the game, Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath, Kevin Peterson at the start of his career, Freddie Flintoff at his very best, Steve Harmison, Ricky Ponting, Adam Gilchrist. And I suppose quality, you'd have to say 2005 beats 2023. But in terms of drama, in terms of close games, then this series really has it over any other. A 2-wicket win, a 3-wicket win, a 46-run win and a 49-run win. 4 close games out of 5. I think that 2023 actually, arguably, is the best it's ever been.
People always remember winners, and so because England won this final test, is there such a thing as a moral victory in sport? If there is this as close as it gets?
Yeah, I guess there is such a thing as a moral victory in sport, and England drawing the series, you know, you can argue that, but I think it kind of misses the point, really. Moral victory or not, this has been a terrific series, and to come from 2-0 down and to even it up to a piece with a really quality Australia side with real quality on both sides as well. There's been so many amazing performances individually, from Mitch Marsh's century in a losing cause at Headingley to Ben Stokes, near on smash and grabber at Lords. You know, that's the mark of a proper contest, when you can still pick out wonderful moments on the losing side, and that's what this series has had from beginning to end.
How did the crowd react to the Aussies, mate?
They were fine. They were good. The Oval was actually pretty well. Was absolutely fine. David Warner was given a send off, a good send off, and when the Aussies kind of half-heartedly held the urn to the sky in England, retaining the Ashes and all that, they were applauded by the England fans. So it was a very good-natured way to finish what at times have been quite a hot-headed series, especially after what happened at Lords. But all even, all squares, and smiles all round.
Jon, finally, just on a commercial basis here, and this is what has fascinated me as much as the cricket, because I'm a bit of a nerd in these matters, just the amount of money this has generated, the amount of headlines, the amount of eyeballs, the amount of clicks, the amount of engagement. And, it is a huge running soap opera saga of a sports event that goes over 5 tests over 5 days. It goes for the best part of 2 months. Everyone that has had any kind of commercial interest in this must be absolutely delighted because they've all made money.
Yes. It's just such a shame that when other nations play Test cricket, it actually costs them money. And that is the great problem that in England, that Test cricket needs to work out. How do you level the playing field? And one of the ways of levelling the playing field is changing the way that the money is divvied out. It can't be right that West Indies travel to England next year and they don't make any money from the tour when so much money is made from the tour. And then when England travel to the West Indies, it costs the West Indies so much money because they have to pay for all the travel arrangements. That between the haves and the have-nots, it needs to be addressed. The only way that Test cricket is going to survive outside the big three.
Devlin.
Thanks, John.
You gotta love sport.
The Platform.